This is a City AM Studios production.
Hello and welcome to Business as Usual with me, Matt Kenyon.
And me, Simon Hunt. Coming up on the podcast, a major shake-up for the UK's media landscape as Sky buys ITV's broadcasting division.
And with a steady trickle of interviews and speeches, we are getting a clearer view of Andy Burnham's plan for government. But is the city going to like it?
Plus, we reveal the full economic impact of England's World Cup showdown against Mexico.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. Simon, very luckily, you're already here with us, standing in for Martin. There's quite a few corporate stories for us to dive into today. I think we've all had our eye on this big media takeover, so Sky buying up a large chunk of ITV. Can you tell us about what's going on here?
Yeah, it's always a bit exciting being a journalist and reading about media M&A, so I'm particularly interested in this one.
Good bit of inside baseball there.
But no, this is a big footsie deal. So Sky, which was once footsie listed, is buying the broadcasting division of ITV for a fee of up to 1.6 billion. So it's slightly smaller than that, but there'll be some performance conditions attached based on how much broadcasting advertising revenue they bring in over the next year. But this is a sort of sign of consolidation in the market. The past few years, the British broadcasters have been up against the giants of the US streamers, the likes of Netflix and Disney Plus and these kind of companies, Amazon included. And they just don't have the financial firepower as these US streamers independently. And so they have to combine forces if they are to survive to stand up to these massive players. And I think that's what this is a reflection of.
It is interesting because, we've spoken before about how a lot of the strategy at Sky is being shaped by moving away from just having linear broadcasts. I know that Sky News are moving towards a more sort of YouTube-focused, more streaming-focused dynamic. I suppose, is it a bit surprising that they're now buying up some of the most terrestrially focused bits of ITV? Because they're buying up a lot of the original commissioning. They're leaving behind some of the news stuff, which I suppose would be that sort of parcel off still with ITN. They are going to have a stake. Well, which bits of ITV are going to fall under this new Sky structure?
Yeah, so all of the terrestrial channels, that's ITV1 up to 4, all of the sort of streaming platforms that they have like ITVX and the rest, that's all coming over. ITN is a bit of a strange one because ITV itself.
So ITN is sort of they're the production arm that they license out a lot of ITV's daytime. They make Channel 5 news, they make Channel 4 news. They're quite a big conglomerate news producer.
So they do all of the news stuff, but ITV actually never had a majority stake in ITN. That has several shareholders, including I think the Daily Mail. The owner of Reuters has a stake as well. So that's actually going to be that shareholding is going to be split in two. So after this merger, ITV Studios, that's the bit that's left of ITV after they've sold that bit to Sky, they're going to own 20%, and Sky is also going to own 20%. So that does leave Sky News in a slightly confusing area where they will have their own separate newsroom, but will also have a share in another broadcast newsroom that is technically their rival. So, I don't know how you square that circle, but yeah.
Yeah, slightly confusing times for British television. But as you say, hopefully the consolidation at least gives them a fighting chance. Another thing, Simon, why is it that Ocado's chief executive has stepped down?
So this is a bit of a long-running battle within the boardroom of Ocado. Tim Steiner, the founder, has been the chief executive for several years, basically ever since it floated. But the shares have taken a real battering over the last 5 years, down something like 90%.
Oof.
And there have been moves to oust the CEO, both within the company and by certain shareholders, who are not happy with the way it's been run by Steiner. They lost a major partner in the US recently, which caused their shares to take another hit. Steiner has had quite a storied tenure overseeing the company. A few years ago, he left his wife and kids to shack up with a Polish lingerie model in her 20s, and that cast a bit of a shadow over his operation, his management of the company. So there was something of a boardroom coup to try and oust him, which didn't exactly succeed. And there were calls by some shareholders to actually oust the board members who were behind that putsch. What's ended up happening is Steiner has basically laid out a path for his own exit, where he will depart not immediately, but in the firm's 2028 financial year. And Slightly strange language, slightly strange phraseology, Ocado has said that Tim will transition into a founder role. I'm not quite sure if you're a founder how you can
founded
transition
the company already.
into a. I mean, I don't. How can you transition out of one? I don't know. But
Yeah,
anyway.
so into a slightly less executive
yes,
role.
I think that's what it means. Yeah.
I suppose. I mean, yeah, as you said, the stock price has taken a massive hit since this. And I'm sure that investors at the time when it first floated would not have expected this.
Yeah.
Could you give us a bit of a potted history of what went wrong with Ocado?
Well, so
price?
I think initially it did do incredibly well. I suppose it launched and its pitch to investors was as a online grocery business. That was fundamentally what it did. It was trying to, at the time, 10, 15 years ago, the major supermarkets did not have much of an online offering that wasn't that successful. So Ocado came in and Ocado came in and took a big corner of the market. But they then pivoted into describing themselves as a tech business because they then licensed out all of the robotics they developed for their warehouses to support other delivery operations. And for a while, their shares absolutely soared on the back of that pivot into a tech company. But I think that has unraveled in more recent years because their own tech hasn't been adopted as widely by other supermarkets, by other retailers as they might have hoped.
One more thing, Simon, very briefly. You've been writing about a crypto venture. It was backed by Nigel Farage. It's lost a pretty big chunk of its value over the last few months. What's happened there?
Yeah, so a lot of people might have seen the headlines surrounding Reform leader Nigel Farage over the last few weeks concerning the £5 million gift he got from a crypto billionaire and more recently his ties with a convicted criminal who has also been heavily involved in both in reform and also in crypto gambling. So I thought I'd take a look at some of the investments that Farage has himself got involved in. One of them is a little Aquis-listed Bitcoin firm called Stack BTC, which he invested in and became one of the biggest shareholders in back in March. Its shares are down by more than a third in the space of just 3 months. So it was trading at about 10p a few months ago. Retail investors were invited to buy shares in the company at 10p via a retail offering. So any sort of average Brits who took part in that, following Farage's investment, they would have lost a third of their value. But Farage hasn't, because just days before the retail offering, he was offered the chance to buy shares in the company at 5p. So he's actually still doing all right. His shares are up about 20%. But as I say, just days after he bought shares, the company then doubled the purchase price for the retail offering. So the retail investors who got involved are probably a lot less happy than he is with the investment.
Oh dear. Well, we will be following that story very closely. And we will also be back after the break with a discussion with our opinion editor, Alice Denby, about what we know about Andy Burnham's plans on tax, devolution, and more. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. In just 2 weeks, unless something absolutely extraordinary happens, in the meantime, Andy Burnham will be installed in Downing Street. The King of the North has become more talkative in recent days about his plans for power, from tax policy to his blueprint to split number 10 in two. Our Westminster Watching opinion editor, Alice Denby, joins us now.
Hello.
As it felt as though there was, in the city, a sort of a note of cautious optimism when talk of Burnham arrived, because of the caliber of the people he was surrounding himself with. We had the former chair of Goldman Sachs, Jim O'Neill. We had Andy Haldane, formerly of the Bank of England. They were talking about, scrapping the triple lock, unleashing economic growth. So there was a hope that maybe there would be some kind of a turning point. I would suggest to you that in the last 3 or 4 days, all of that has quite quickly unraveled.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that markets are looking increasingly worried, especially with the prospect of Ed Miliband as Chancellor. Ed Miliband's a proper socialist, right? He doesn't believe in free markets at all. So that is naturally alarming for people. But look, I look at it another way. I think the reason why he was very openly taking advice from these heavy hitters you describe is because he knows that the economy is a weakness for him. And he knows that the markets are going to be looking askance, and it was a desperate attempt to reassure them. But I don't think some of the things he said since then have done the trick.
I wonder if maybe Westminster needs to have a less trusting approach of when major political figures should start bringing in policy advisors they never seem to have actually met before. There was no particular existing relationship between Andy Burnham and Andy Haldane.
No.
It did feel at the time like even then it could be just a bit of a comms operation, particularly because it doesn't look like Andy Burnham is going to be a prime minister led by advisors. It feels like probably for the first time maybe since Gordon Brown we're going to have a prime minister who is genuinely economically opinionated. That is maybe Liz Truss aside, because she was also quite opinionated. But do you think we have the measure of Andy Burnham's economic views now, or do you think we still have some questions to be answered?
I think there are still questions to be answered. I'm still not quite sure I know what Manchesterism is. I think it's very clear that Manchester has been very successful. It's been successful in attracting a lot of private investment, especially around the football teams and so on. I'm not sure how that translates to the rest of the country that doesn't have those kind of pre-existing assets. You know, how you regenerate a struggling coastal town in the same way that you regenerate, a historic conurbation like Manchester. Some of the things he said, I think, will just, have us all rolling our eyebrows, recommitting to the triple lock. How many times can we say it's not sustainable?
And that's unfortunate, because he was giving some signals, and certainly some of the economic advisors around him were definitely giving signals of this being the time when finally we can have a circuit break from that. It always feels like at the beginning of every premiership, you start with the political capital where you can get rid of the triple locks. If not now, he's not going to become any more able to do that later on in his premiership.
Exactly. But I think you're right. I think, look, if he becomes prime minister in 2 weeks' time, you're right. This will be the peak of his powers. So we should expect something big. Whether it's capital gains tax, whether it's something to do with property taxes. I actually think, if he could do something about making council tax more rational or introducing a land value tax, it would be bad for London, unfortunately. But, council tax is an outdated tax and it does need reform. So that would be something I think I would cautiously welcome, albeit that it would be expensive for us in the city. But what else has he said? I mean, he wants to renationalise lots of utilities, including housing. I mean, how do you nationalise housing without undermining property rights?
Yeah. And it also feels like the sort of the major bit of infrastructure nationalisation, which he's giving signals of wanting to go towards, is Thames Water, which, despite all these signals towards Manchester, is, as we know, an overwhelmingly southeast of England utility. So I do wonder whether he's going to be able to nail the economic message in the first few months, when it's going to be overwhelmingly about devolution and utilities.
Yeah, and devolution is not the sort of thing that necessarily gets the markets excited. I think it's also worth pointing out that Burnham's speculation and this kind of interregnum we're having already has economic distorting effects. So we're already seeing, with rumours of capital gains tax, we're already seeing businesses realise their assets to try and avoid a higher rate. With Thames Water, we had ministers around Andy Burnham sort of signalling desperately to him that they're super left wing and therefore rejecting a rescue package from private investors. That's a damaging thing too.
Yeah, because if that was based on just jockeying, then that's a very corrosive way of doing it.
It's certainly what it looks like to me.
But is there still a faint glimmer of hope? Is there still a world in which the Jim O'Neills of this world will still have the ear of Andy Burnham once he steps into Downing Street? And is there even a world in which he could save the Exchequer money by moving Parliament to the north and thereby swerve the 40 billion bill that is the current estimate for how much it would cost to refurbish the Houses of Parliament if the Commons were still sitting around the refurbishment?
No, I think this whole idea of moving Number 10 to the north is just a distraction. I think it'd be a huge waste of time. I don't think it would save you money on the refurbishment of Parliament, because you're going to have to spend the money restoring it anyway, right? So I just think that this will I don't think this will make it till Christmas, because Andy Burnham's not going to spend his whole time on the train between Manchester and London. That's
particularly not if it's Avanti West Coast. I mean, he might spend all of his time just on the train on that basis.
A huge waste of his own time, which is, after all, like the most valuable kind of resource a Prime Minister has. Look, I think this is going to be much more like what we had with Rachel Reeves. She can go around making the right noises to businesses, convincing them that she knows what she's doing, and then it will very quickly prove the opposite. Well,
Alice will be checking in as the next few weeks and months go on to see how these predictions hold up. But for now, thank you very much, and we'll have you back on the podcast very soon.
Absolute pleasure.
Finally, this week, I think it is pretty fair to say we have had the booziest Monday morning in British history.
England.
At least in terms of 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. pub drinking. That is, of course, because of the England-Mexico match that catapulted the Three Lions into the quarterfinals and was pretty impactful for pubs. There was a dispensation given from Keir Starmer that pubs could stay open basically all night
Finally, a legacy for Keir Starmer.
Yeah, like probably one of his proudest moments. He's put all sorts of fun TikTok videos. If anything, it feels like he's sort of regaining his mojo at the very end. What, though, is the economic impact of this? Well, that's what we'll dig into now. We have our deputy sports editor, Matt Hardy, here with us.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm very tired.
Yeah. Yeah, so full disclosure, we're recording this sort of later on Monday. So we're like some very brave souls in the office, including yourself, also Alice from the previous segment, did tactically stay up. You seem to have done quite a wise thing of going to sleep and then setting an alarm and waking up just so you'd got some headway.
Yeah, I think I'd still manage 6-7 hours sleep, so I think I've done well. But look, I wasn't one of those people down the local boozer, and maybe I should have been, because the atmosphere across the country's been great. Yeah, look, we think a run to the final, according to some financial data, could be worth £250 million in retail and spend data.
Because we've got some very well-timed fixtures.
We do. So going on now, Saturday, 10 p.m, and then an 8, if we win, obviously, against Norway, an 8 p.m, in the middle of next week, and then an 8 p.m. the following Sunday. So it's nice times from here on out. Nice Sunday roast and a bit of football. It should be brilliant. And you look at kind of, I think the BBPA, the British Beer and Pub Association, was saying that every game is kind of worth 20 million in pints. So over a run of a World Cup, that's not far off 200 million either.
It'll be interesting to see when any data is done post the fact, but I was talking to them on Friday when we were doing a bit of a preview of this match, and they suggested that it could be as many as 1 million pints sold overnight on a Sunday, which just must be such orders of magnitude higher than whatever the previous Sunday night record was.
It just makes you proud to be British, doesn't it?
Really does.
I mean, you've got to think, there was some data from Heineken today that said year-on-year sales are up 4,000%. Obviously, the problem is this time last year the pubs weren't open. So, I mean, it's quite hard to quantify.
Yeah, it could be like in terms of the 2 a.m. on a Monday morning, it could be like 1 billion% increase.
Right.
If it's zero.
But I feel like Brits on the lash is something that kind of comes and goes with sport. And we're in this amazing moment at the moment where hospitality's been kind of shoved around by the Chancellor in her budget last year. Yet we've got thousands upon thousands of people. I think we've been, I'm not sure about you, Matt, but at Wimbledon over the last 2 weeks. Queen's, Henley, the boat race, the Sail GP's coming down to Portsmouth at the end of the month.
Yeah.
The football, there's been a women's T20 Cricket World Cup. You know, all of this is not just sport, it's people going out for a meal, spending money, buying merch and kind of investing back into the economy.
But enough about the average Brit. Let's talk about the ultra wealthy. You've been writing something extraordinary about the sort of scale of the price tags that some of these tickets for the quarters, the semis and the finals are going to see. What kind of numbers, what sort of insane numbers are we looking at here?
So I've had a little look around for the Miami Stadium, formerly the Hard Rock Stadium. It's where the Miami Dolphins play their NFL. One of our colleagues is heading out there, so it should be good fun. But I did spot a ticket for $8 million.
$8 million?
$8 million this morning. I have only seen that topped by a ticket, funnily enough, at the same stadium between Brazil and Scotland in the group stage, which was 11 million. So I've an £8 million or dollar ticket. And basically what this is anyone can resell their tickets. And I imagine a lot of this are Brazilian fans who thought, or Mexican fans who thought they'd beat one of England or Norway going, hang on a minute, there's no point me going to Miami. Let's try and make some money back. But you can get there for a measly $2,500, Simon. So
well, suddenly when that England fan famously said that he'd sold his house to get a ticket, starting to sound a bit less far-fetched now, isn't it, when you hear those sorts of figures?
Yeah, well, it's kind of crazy. And I think I've had a little look going forward as well. If we do beat Norway, this is still a week out. England would have to beat Erling Haaland's Norway, but tickets are going up to $800,000 for the semi-final. And you're looking at $111,000 for the final. So there's some argument to say
$111,000 is the sort of as more of a median.
Yeah, it's kind of up there. It's so expensive. The minimum ticket I found this morning for the final of the World Cup was £5,000, and that's pounds, so that's $6,000. So it's not cheap to go and watch a bit of football. And I mean, you look at the Azteca on Monday morning. The tickets were going for $5,000 pre-match. You know, it's not cheap this World Cup.
And even in London, I remember when England reached the Euros finals in 2021 for the first time, obviously in a long, long time. The scenes on the streets, even in London at that point, were extraordinary. And it will be, if England do make it to the finals, that will be pretty insane scenes.
Yeah, I mean, my kind of West London scene last night was I had a little look out the window and there were 3 lads in a trolley going down the high street.
Martin.
To the audio tape of a couple of foxes having a nice evening. So like that was my kind of very West London half full this morning as it went light and I tried to go to bed.
On which note, let's park this here. Let's park our trolley outside Matt Hardy's house. But thank you very much. I'm sure we will be tapping up your wisdom a few more times before this tournament is through.
Cheers, lads.
Well, that is all we have time for today. Thank you, as ever, for listening to Business as Usual.
And don't forget to subscribe to City AM's daily newsletter and, of course, to download our free app.
It has got everything that all the expensive news apps do, but it's free instead. We'll be back in your podcast feeds tomorrow at 6 a.m. But for now, goodbye.
Goodbye.